Why, Crusher, it's good to see you.
You're listening to Krush Performance, your weekly source for sport performance and athletic development information. Get the Krush blogs, podcasts, and performance links at crushperformance.com. Now, here he is, the Crusher.
And welcome to Krush Performance, everybody. I am Jeff Krushell, and we're your weekly source for performance information. Hey, if you have any questions, comments, smart remarks, reach out to us. Get to me at jeffkrushell.com. You can email me there, sign up for the newsletter, check out our courses, Creating Coachable Players, and also you can get to the Krush archives. 20 years of Krush Performance radio and now podcast and now YouTubing as well. So really, really cool to see how things are coming together. And you can follow us on social media. Check out Krush Performance or Jeff Krushell and follow us there as well. And guys, listen, if you do need some help with your program, with your team's program, school's program, your organizational program, let us know. It's all about sharing the knowledge, right? And here's the deal. If we don't know the answer, don't have all the answers, but if there's an answer we don't have, I can almost guarantee there's somebody out there that we're connected with that will have the answer. And the great thing about all these incredible people is they will help. That's all I can say. They will help. Much like the guests here on Krush Performance, just sharing their incredible knowledge, all of their work. And that's why we're so excited to be going into the 20th year of Krush Performance Radio. And as you know, if you've been following the show, one of our initiatives this year is to go back right to the very start and visit with some of the great guests we've had on the show. And you guys have been a big part of that. Listen, if there is a conversation, a topic, or a guest that you liked way back in the day, or somebody you would like to see on the show, again, just email me and we will reach out and try to make that happen. We have our list, and our most recent lineup of guests, is from that list. I mean, are you kidding me? Look at the guests we have had here on the tail end of 2025. Absolutely outstanding. But the sharing. Listen, I am really, really excited about the conversations that have happened here on the show the last few weeks. So, hey, listen, please share this with the people in your circle, whether it's your teammates, your coaching staff, maybe it's your organization, top to bottom, maybe it's just your family. But some of the stuff that we've talked about here on the show the last few weeks and heading into the new year, so important. You want to talk about tapping into potential and really harnessing what people are capable of. This is it. Now, for everybody who's listened to and watched the show for years and years, you know what I'm all about. Exercise science. That's my background. Exercise physiology, kinesiology, and of course, psychology. I took every psychology course I could at university without actually going into the faculty of psychology. They wouldn't let me take any other courses unless I went into the faculty, but I had other plans for my school then. But it's such a fascinating area. Those two worlds, the body and the mind. We do talk about all that stuff on this show. The strength and conditioning side, the human performance side, the physiology, physical side of it. It just seems really simple to me. And it's not simple, but I've been doing it for 30 years. So you kind of figure some things out along the way, right? But if there's an athlete out there that wants to get faster, yes, we can definitely help you get faster. Now, when it comes to like world-class Olympic sprinters, would we take an Olympic sprinter in? Yes, you better believe it. But to really, really get that athlete to their highest potential, we would go to somebody like the guys at Ethos and Kevin and the guys there to really, really focus in on that sprinting stride, right? Because that's their life's work. That's their area of true expertise. No question we can help with the athlete side. We can get them to here. But you need those people in your life that can take you that extra little bit, right? So take a hockey player, for example. There is not a hockey player on planet Earth that we wouldn't take in. We love it. I personally love it so much. Whether it comes to their skating performance, stick performance, just overall holistic performance on and off the ice, that's what we do. But would we actually coach them in hockey? No. There's experts, people who have dedicated their lives to that area of expertise. Same thing in baseball, same thing in squash, same thing in volleyball, same thing. Athlete development for sport performance. And again, on our line, the course we have out for baseball players, creating coachable players, we're going to make that available for every sport. So important that parents, coaches, and athletes understand the connection between the physical side of training. And that's where a lot of people get hung up, probably because it's pretty easy and we kind of understand it, right? It's easy to get hung up there, but man, it will only take you so far. Trust me. And that's one thing that I learned very early in my career, especially working with some of the world's top athletes. The physical side was actually quite simple because everybody was motivated. Everybody was willing to do the work. Everybody was listening about rest and recovery and peaking performance and being at the highest level of readiness for next day's training or the next competition. So that side was quite easy. Balancing sleep, getting in nutrition, hydration. That's just all planning. But when it came to tying in the mental side of it, there's so much to talk about. And again, one of our sort of underlying themes here the last couple of years on Krush Performance has been this concept called perception. And I don't think we've really got to the true roots of it yet, though the last couple of conversations with Dr. Rady and Dr. Jacques Dallaire, come on, people. Those are two world-class human beings doing world-class performance work. Science, though, the science that drives those conversations. And yet, the simplicity of the messages. Oh my goodness. I just wish every athlete, coach, and parent would just listen to those conversations. So helpful. And hey, that's what we feel. That's what I feel the show's all about, right? Maybe getting you guys thinking about some things that you haven't thought about before. That's why we get all these incredible guests on. And then you know what? The conversations and the interactions between us on social media, and I get it. I don't do a lot of social media, not really good at it, but it's meaningful. When we do connect there, that's meaningful stuff to me. I'll just let you know. But also the emails we get and the messages, the thank you messages, but also the questions. You guys get me and our team thinking about things that either we haven't thought about for a while, or maybe we've neglected, or maybe we hadn't thought about it in the context that you're proposing it. So it's just a beautiful relationship between us and you guys. And I can't tell you how much I value it, as we work our way through this 20th season. Okay, let's get to it. Enough of me rambling on here. But I just wanted to really start this show off because this will be the final show here of 2025. And again, for everybody who's been watching the show, one of our initiatives is to go back and get those guests on. If you're new to the show, well, here's a guest that is an absolute Krush favorite. He's only been on the show once before, and that's when we talked about his book, Legacy. And it's a story about him following the All Blacks on their quest for the Rugby World Cup, right? And of course, the All Blacks, one of the most successful sporting franchises in the history of all sport. James Kerr goes in to figure out what's making this organization tick. And boy, oh boy, what a ride. If you haven't read the book Legacy, I'm going to strongly recommend it. It is a Krush must read for all of our athletes, coaches. You have to read this book for no other reason than to understand maybe some of the underpinnings of successful cultures. And again, just remember, it's not about winning. It's about what creates the environment where winning's a higher probability, right? We always say to our athletes, look, when we sit down with them, when we bring in a team or an organization, or if I'm asked to go out and work with a team, hey, one of the first questions, hey, what are the goals and objectives here? What are we trying to accomplish? Because that's going to determine a lot of the decision making. It's problem solving, like you guys have heard me say before. And winning is always right up there. Winning. Hey man, we got to win. And I understand, of course, success in the world of sport is a W on the board. That is no question. Okay. And let's just leave that alone. There are so many things out of your control when it comes to winning. So we kind of put winning to the side and we go, okay, well, in order to be successful in your sport, whatever it might be synchronized swimming team, it might be figure skating, it might be squash, baseball, football, it might be rugby, it might be whatever, it doesn't matter, baseball, it doesn't matter the sport. Whatever your sport is, where are you at? Who are you competing against? Where where are you operating, right? Like, and again, that's one of the things I quickly learned in my work with Major League Baseball all over the world. Everybody has the same objectives, and that is to have more success, which is greatly determined by winning. Not necessarily all the time. Some of the time it was just player development, especially at the ages we were working with. And player development cannot be about winning, right? It's about developing players who eventually can contribute, bring value to the game so an organization can win, right? That team environment. But when we talk about these different organizations, hey, what do you have available in terms of field, in terms of time, in terms of equipment? All of these things kind of break down the plan. And winning is very, very rarely mentioned, if ever. What we're looking at is developing an environment and a process that can help you maybe increase the odds of having success in an in-game setting. That's what it's all about. And that's the physical side, that's the mental side, and everything that goes around it. And that was the beauty of James Kerr's book, Legacy, the All Blacks. What the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life, because this stuff goes well beyond sport, right? Well beyond sport. I can't tell you how many like first responders, military, businesses, like big corporate businesses use this book, or have referred to this book as sort of a guide to, hey, what does a successful culture look like? Because that's what it comes down to. That's what the All Blacks did. And that's what James laid out for us. So listen, James Kerr is back. I'm going to get to it right now because I can't wait for this conversation. He's been on the show once before. Very, very proud to have him back here as we head into the holiday season. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation as much as I know I do. I'll talk to you on the other side. Mr. James Kerr, best-selling author, coach, consultant, high-performance expert, and Krush Favorite. Welcome back to the show. It's been a while, and welcome to our 20th season. So great to have you back.
Thank you, Jeff, and congratulations, 20 years. That's a legacy in itself. Extraordinary achievement, I think.
Yeah, when we started this, we weren't sure. I'm not a radio guy at all, but it sort of just came together here with a local sports station, and now it's turned into this incredible thing 20 years later. And originally, the idea, James, was to, in my opinion, to help athletes, parents, coaches out there maybe think about things that they weren't thinking about or couldn't think about because they didn't know about it. And so over the years, the show has just led us down this path, connecting with incredible people like yourself. And that's one of our platforms for this 20th season, is getting back and catching up and revisiting with some of our great guests. And you're one of those for sure.
Thank you.
When you were on last, it was just around the release of Legacy. And I finished reading it and dog-earing it and marked it up for my third time through. I'm going, I got to reach out to Mr. Kerr to see if he'll come on. And I want to thank you for that, because that was a great, great conversation.
Thank you. I remember it well and enjoyed it. And that was a long time ago. You know, that was, without blowing the trumpet for the book, that was 1 million odd copies later now.
Right.
So it's been an extraordinary journey for both of us, I guess, in terms of watching our kind of baby grow, if you like, and get out there in the world. So it's good to be back.
Well, I have a couple questions for you, but I'm also excited where you're at right now and the things you have in the oven right now. So we'll get to that for sure. But before we do, for maybe some of our new listeners that haven't heard our conversation, or maybe even don't know about Legacy yet, go back to the Krush archives for sure. You could check out the book most certainly. But for you, post the book now, looking back all those years and all those people you've influenced, any major takeaways for you as the author of that incredible book?
Well, first, thank you for your words. You know, one of the extraordinary things about having a book that sells a lot is it's not about me, it's about the book. And I think the phenomenon of watching something grow in its own terms has been amazing. And of course you go, well, why is this book about, for those of you who know nothing about it, a book about a rugby team from New Zealand, a country the other side of the world? Why has it had such traction in so many different places? You know, it's sold, I think, 1.5 million odd copies now, something like that. And from Argentina to Japan to, you know, Spain, Brazil, Germany, Canada, the United States. What's the universal appeal of it? And I think I've got a couple of answers to that. One is there are some fundamental kind of sorry, that's my phone. There are some fundamental kind of virtues, if you like, or values and principles within the book that I think are universal and almost anthropological. And the most important one is, I think, that idea of legacy itself, that idea of leaving the jersey in a better place. And anyone who is a coach and anyone who is a parent, and I think anyone in a way who's sort of a human being, must understand that idea that, certainly for me, as soon as I had children, it's not about me anymore, it's about them. And there's something in coaching and something in parenting and something in teaching and something in leading it's about service, and it's about service to creating an environment in which others thrive.
Yeah.
And I think that's deeply relevant. I hope and believe, and obviously something that's very resonant, because we're all kind of we're all learning as we go along, and to find some sort of, I think, quite ancient wisdom around what it means to be a leader and what it means to lead in life, because we're all leading a life. I think it's had a real resonance for people, and that's of course a huge honor to have brought that to the world. But as I say, it's the book, it's not me anymore. And so I think I've learned that there is a genuine human desire to be of service and to create value for others. And when you create value for others, you create value for yourself, and everyone's kind of a winner, I think.
Yeah. No, it's an incredible thing. And I like how you tied it all together. And for me personally, being a sports science person, and sport has been, of course, maybe one of the major anchors in my life, using sport as a platform. But this resonates, as you mentioned, the business of life, that's sort of the catch, what the All Blacks can teach us about the business of life. When I look at successful business organizations, certainly the successful teams out there, we're all trying to look, hey, what are they doing? And we know teams are looking at teams and sports are looking at different sports. But you're right. I'm amazed. I see, some of our first responders and military people, looking at legacy and learning from that. And, even some of our teachers and our business leaders looking at that and going, here's some things we can use to help guide our ship in achieving our goals. I think it's a really, really cool way that sport is sort of ingrained in our society, maybe.
Yeah. And I think that those universal principles, because, great groups work it with, and many of them. There's a throw a bit of Tolstoy at you. Tolstoy in Anna Karenina, I think it is, begins saying, unhappy families, I'm going to paraphrase, but unhappy families are unhappy for all sorts of reasons, plenty of ways to be dysfunctional. But happy families are happy for the same reason. And I think the same is true for teams and families and groups, that there are some fundamental principles about what it takes to create connection, to create cohesion, to create common cause, to have mutual standards, to hold yourself to account and each other to account, to create an environment of responsibility and of respect, of human dignity. And all of those things are, kind of Gilbert Anoka, the great All Blacks mental skills coach, has a line, just because it's common sense doesn't mean it's common practice.
Right. Yeah.
It just makes sense. There are some fundamental human principles and precepts that in our striving to be better and our striving to perform and our striving to win, often we forget. We think we can cut corners on that. But there's another wonderful coach who showed me a pyramid he uses, which has performance at the sharp end of the pyramid, at the top of the triangle. And in the middle of the pyramid, there is a player. And at the bottom of the pyramid, there is person. Now, a lot of the time we focus on the tip, on the performance. We're trying to make that right. And if we fail to get the performance, we try to make the player better. But if we don't address the person who's the base of all of this, we don't tend to achieve the results. But if you flip the script and you start to think, well, what do people need? What do human beings need? What's the basis for performance? How do we optimize for humans?
Right.
Then the player develops and you get the performance. The score takes care of itself. And there's just something so fundamental about that. I think.
You are preaching to the choir here. I'm amazed you say that. In our programs, James, our logo is this interlocking 3 rings, and that's for a number of reasons. That's a story for another day. But that one caught me while I was with the strength. I was the head strength coach for the Toronto Blue Jays, and that was out of a performance book. Jim Collins, Good to Great, as a matter of fact. That's part of his, the core concept that he has. And I'm going, that resonates with me. In our company, it's interesting you say that. Those 3 rings can mean very different things at different times. But at the very start, when we sit down with an athlete or a team, that first ring is the person. That second ring is the athlete. And that third ring is the player or performer when we start putting together a plan. So I love that you say that. And it's interesting. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about now that you're sort of looking back and we've watched the ebb and flow of not just the All Blacks, but great teams and great organizations, even in business, the ebb and flow, periods of success, periods of challenge, and not necessarily failure, but challenge and overcoming those challenges. It's not always about winning. And I think it's important, would you say, to understand that all these principles, all these fundamentals, winning is just an outcome of a really good process.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change the importance of that stuff.
Well, listen, I think, the irony, it's like love. When you chase it, it seems to escape you. It comes when you're not looking.
Yes.
And I think there's something quite similar about if you're chasing the win, right? It's not an optimum environment to achieve the win.
Right.
And the optimum environment to achieve the win is soft, hippie words like love and connection and appreciation and gratitude and humility and all of those kind of soft wussy words, if you like, right, deliver hard results. But if you're chasing those hard results, you're being ruthless, you're being completely focused on the outcome, right? That's not an optimum performance environment. That tends to be, we try too hard, we overcompensate, we grow sharp elbows to get other people out of our way. Our overt competitiveness creates the friction and the factions that mean, certainly in a team sport, and every sport is a team sport in one way or another. That breaks down the cohesion and the common cause and the camaraderie and the chemistry and all of that kind of stuff that you need to achieve great results. So there's a real or there's a tension, not an irony even, but there's a tension in that idea that if you focus on getting the conditions right, if you focus on setting the standards, and not just performance standards, but behavioral standards, and if you stay on task step by step by step, and you do the basics best, and you stay connected, and you keep your dopamine levels high up, you keep the joy, and you create safety for people and belonging for people, and a sense of kind of meaning and significance for people, then what you will do is, the way I would put it is, you take potential to peak more often or more consistently. Right. We all have a certain amount of potential, but most of us don't play to that most of the time, right? We play beneath ourselves. So what's that gap that you can get to take potential to peak more consistently, I think becomes a question. How do you optimize that environment in order to achieve that? It's not one where the numbers matter more than anything. It's just not that. It's not one that you're looking at the scoreboard or you're looking at the clock. Because when you're looking at the scoreboard and you're looking at the clock, somebody passes you the ball or the puck or the whatever, you drop it, you fumble it, because your mind's not on the game.
Yeah.
But the game, the craft, the moment is where difference happens, where performance actually happens. You need to win the moment every moment, moment by moment. And you can't do that if you're worried about winning, you know? And so it brings us back to the kind of the joy and the presence of performance, I think, and where you can go into flow and just, even if you're 50 points down, you can enjoy the performance. That will lift your game more than anything. But if you're chasing its score or you're looking for a result all the time, you're trying too hard. And your attention isn't where it belongs. Your attention belongs on what's next, what's next, what's next.
Yeah.
And so there's a performance principle about, like, it's a hard-ass performance principle about focusing on the soft stuff.
Right. I love it.
You know?
I love that.
And we know that, you know, if you're writing something, you know, if you're trying to write an email and it's an important email and you're really sweating it, chances are it won't be a very good email.
Right.
You know, if you go, actually, I just want to communicate, I want to add value in this communication and I want to do it well, and I'm just going to write a nice email, a good email, chances are it'll work. But if you try too hard, if you stretch yourself in a way, if you're worried about outcomes, all that anxiety, all of that overexertion, all of that attention where it doesn't matter, it comes out in the email, and it comes out on the paddock, and it comes out in life, you know?
I like that hard ass approach on the soft stuff.
Yeah.
I
there
love
you go.
it.
Here's a headline. There's a slug line for the show.
Yeah, I'm honestly gonna start a t-shirt line from the show. All these great little things that come out of the show, because that is a beauty. I'll tell you right now. Well, you know, a couple of things that came out of legacy for me was how you organize it just off the start here before we move on. 15 lessons. I have a list of the 15 lessons, and it's a great guide. And for anybody out there who's just looking to maybe connect some dots, I would suggest that. One of the things you mentioned in there, James, though, is this idea of the sigmoid curve. Like, I am fascinated by human performance, and maybe even more so team performance. And we look at some of these legacy teams in recent history anyway that have been successful over time. The All Blacks, of course, being one historically in sport. And we do want to learn from them. But this idea of the sigmoid curve that you mentioned in the sort of the adapt sort of theme of the book, you know, making adjustments at the top. And when we talked about it in our last conversation, I'm going, wow, think about that for a second. Who is going to have the gall when they're really riding high to maybe shake things up and make some changes? And it automatically brought me right at the top of my mind, Tiger Woods at the top of his game.
Yeah.
I remember he stepped back and he got a new swing coach, because he knew he was good. Well, he was the best at the time, but he also felt internally there's something left untouched. He went and talked to a couple of coaches. They changed his grip, I believe it was. And then his performance dropped for a bit. And then he went on to outperform even his previous self.
Exactly. Yeah, it was. You're right. It was his grip, and which impacted his his sort of swing chain, if you like. But it's I think it comes down to a fundamental commitment, which is to get better every day.
Yeah.
Right. It's a fundamental commitment. And so there's a mindset aspect to it that demands that of you. So, you know, you've got a successful radio show, podcast, you know, franchise, you know, if you're not asking yourself, how can I make this better every day? It'll get worse, or it'll get stale. You know, you've definitely, you know, improved your game, and you go, well, we adjust in terms of the guests, we adjust in terms of the format. I'm learning about how to ask better questions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you might go, actually, maybe it's not a radio show, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a book, you know, maybe it's all of those things.
Right.
You know, and unless you're questioning what you're doing, then you are in that alpha curve. Some days you're on and some days you'll swing down. And so I think it's like a restless discontent, or somebody's described it as a healthy, and I think there was a book called Healthy Worry.
Right.
You know, positive paranoia. whatever you call them. If we're talking about kind of, that idea that and again, there's a sort of a tension there. You want to be able to be absolutely satisfied with what you've delivered now, and perpetually dissatisfied in order to make it better.
Yeah,
and
that's what keeps us going. I wonder
it
if
keeps us
that's what
going,
drives
and
performers as well.
It's I think it was Viktor Frankl, right? That we're not designed to sit in perfect harmony with nature and perfect stasis. That's stagnation for humans. We're designed really to be under challenge, to have a degree of challenge. That's where we grow. Bodybuilders break down on a cellular level in order to build up. The Shiva, the great god of the Hinduism, and we might talk a little bit about Everest and Nepal and so on. But the great god, he is the destroyer, right? But he destroys in order that creation happens.
Right.
Wildfires in Canada burn down forests in order that the next generation comes through.
Right.
That is sort of the way of nature, I think, isn't it? That we need to prune, to cut things back in order to have them grow. The wisteria grows. We need to slice it down, even though we don't want to, in order to have it grow more. We prune our apples. And so that process of cutting back or honing in order to sharpen. I think it's got to be a daily practice, and that's where we, if we maintain the metaphor, that's where we keep the edge.
Right.
And that's what we're designed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of an overlying theme here. In our last conversation, one of the major notes I took when we were speaking is when we got into a very similar conversation, and you brought up this whole concept of ethos and what that meant. But your perspective and the way you framed it up, I thought was incredibly powerful, and that seems to have some traction in your life as well, in some of your new works that I'm very, very excited about here.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked a little bit last time about my new book back then called Ethos. It's still my new book, but I'm nearly there.
All right.
And I benefited from actually being able to let it kind of percolate a little bit, because one of the privileges of Legacy having such a wide reach is that I've been invited into some extraordinary environments, high performing environments, from the English Premier League to special forces, in the UK and in the US, particularly to West Point, to the England cricket team, to a lot of different teams. And so my thinking about it has been able to evolve and been tested, and I've been able to look at across a wide variety of things. And I think the principles hold true. I think cultures begin with a story. And the story is kind of, who are we and what are we doing here and why does it matter? And how do we win? In a sporting team, who are we and how do we win? But in a life, who are we? What are we doing here? Why does it matter? What will our life amount to? That legacy question. And then once you understand that and articulated it, or you've defined it, you can then design an environment that reflects that. And so the process I use with teams in terms of coaching and consulting is define, design, and deliver. First you want to articulate who you are, what you stand for, what you won't. Where you're going, what your vision is, why does it matter? What are the standards you hold what are the principles you live by? What are the standards you hold yourself to account? You hold yourself and others to account for. Those are the primary questions, if you like, right at the heart of a group, of a team, of a culture, of a country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you go, well, okay, what does that mean? How do we design the environment, our processes, our practices, our rituals. Who do we recruit to align with that? How do we recruit them? How do we induct them? Right? How do we coach them? How do we teach? How do we review their performance? Right? How do we ritualize the enterprise? How do we create that physical, visual, verbal environment that reflects that fundamental narrative, if you like? And then how do we reward it? What gets rewarded? Do our values get rewarded, or is it just results? Right. So you can start to align, create an environment, and design your culture around based on those sort of principles. And then the next question is, well, what does that mean for us as leaders? How do we deliver? Who do I have to be as a leader to serve that mission? To represent that culture, to further that purpose. And so then it gets personal, and then you start to lead from within, and then you start to think, well, what's my ethos as a human being? And it's one of the oldest questions, I think, because you go back to the Stoics, you go back to Cicero, or and the Romans or the Greeks, and their life's work in the beginning of philosophy really was this search for what does it mean to be a virtuous man or human being? What does it mean to live well, to live properly? And so it becomes a very profound question, I think, for all of us to go. And if you're a parent, you go, well, it's all. And I've used parenting quite a lot as an example, but I think certainly for me personally, it's like, well, how do I want to show up for my kids? Because they will follow my example. So I want to get pretty clear on what I stand for and what I believe and who I want to be, because they're going to replicate that, and I'm sending them out on their own in the world. So it's almost like building the Starship Enterprise. You want to build a great, strong ship because you don't know what galaxy you're going to end up in.
Yeah, right.
You want to build it right. You want to get the rivets in the right place, and it's all we kind of have is that philosophy and worldview and ethos. And ethos, of course, means character. It's our character, how we show up. And the more older I get, the more maybe experienced I go, well, that in a way is what matters. Am I kind? Am I respectful? Have I added value? Have I enhanced the lives of others? Knowing that that's not a altruistic and unselfish act. It's actually the most selfish act I can have, because I know that if I can add value to others, I accrue value for myself. Yeah. And so I think they're big and important questions, Yeah.
I've just been attacked by one of our dogs here.
I can see there's a door is open, I think. Yeah. It's all good.
Well, I like it. And the thing, I think the glimpse we got with you inside of the All Blacks was that they put so much of their maybe thought and processes built around those types of things. So that's one group you were lucky enough to spend time with and give us some insights. But I'm really looking forward to your next adventure here, or hearing more about it, where the earth meets the sky, and your time with the Gurkhas. This is going to be an interesting one, because this seems like a very similar culture, right? You talk about environments, and it seems that environment and culture is just a predominant finding in all of these successful cultures.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that I'll come to the Gurkhas in a second, but I think the closer you are to the kind of tip of the spear, where performance is a matter of life and death. So I'm thinking about special force operators, or SWAT teams, or firefighters, or the Gurkhas. The more character counts, and character ethos of the organization. When you're entrusted with taking the lives of others, you better have your house in order. You want to have your house in order. Because you are playing with fire, and you don't want that to kind of become about ego, right? That's a disaster.
Yeah, that's real stuff.
And when you're serving your country or your community to the point that you might die, you want to know why that matters to you. There are big questions. They are fundamental motivators and behavioral kind of modifiers, if you like. And so those questions, I think when you're slopping around as a teenager, as a student or something, these questions might not seem very important.
Right.
They might. But when you face life and death decisions, have to make life and death decisions, parenting, they are life decisions you're making about conduct and the way you're being. And I'm not being a Boy Scout. It's really hard to live up to the standards you set yourself to. But so to the Gurkhas, their code, their ethos is called Qaeda. And what I have found fascinating, and just for context, the book is called Where the Earth Meets the Sky. It's about Everest, that point where the Earth meets the sky, which of course Everest is also where humanity meets the gods in Nepali and Hinduism and Nepali folklore. And it's about ascent, and it's about overcoming adversity to get to the top. So I spent a little over a month embedded with a group of Gurkhas who were seeking to put the first serving Gurkha on the summit of Mount Everest. And just for context, the Gurkhas and the Sherpas are clearly a different group. The Gurkhas, I've always joked, they go down to fight, where the Sherpas climb up to conquer. So there had never been a serving Gurkha on the summit of Everest. And then there was an attempt in 2015, and there was a massive earthquake that wiped the country. 10,000 people died in that moment. 20-something people died in base camp, and the Gurkhas were in the thick of it. So that was a failed attempt, if you like, and they came back 2 years later, and I was with them. Not all the way to the top. I stopped at base camp. I let them do the climbing part. And so it's a story of. So it's really, the book is a story of that, and it is kind of in the queue to be published. I'm putting out Ethos first, and then that. But what I became fascinated with is, and am fascinated with, is that kind of cultural narrative, the story. What does it mean to be a Gurkha?
Right.
And that is that idea of Qaeda. And I think one of the most interesting parts about it is it's not that different to what it means to be an All Black. The same values are there. The values around humility, values around loyalty, values around excellence, values around respect, values around kind of getting better every day.
Right.
It falls under excellence, I think. Very high personal standards. And all of those things are very much the same. And they've obviously kind of incubated in very different environments, very different cultures, but they're the same principles. Why? Well, I think they're the principles that drive teamship and genuine high performance. And if you go anthropological and you step back a little bit, you say, well, isn't that our advantage as a species? Humans' competitive advantage as a species is the ability to work together.
Sure.
We have opposable thumbs, we can make tools, we can create language, abstract thought, and we can turn it into language, and we can communicate that language. But most importantly for humans, we can coordinate ourselves in order to build skyscrapers or fly planes or win the Stanley Cup or whatever it is. It's our ability to coordinate our efforts and to be great teammates that actually sets us apart. And in an individualistic, atomized society, we tend to forget that.
Right.
But all great success is a team success. No one does it alone. No man is an island, as they say, and no woman as well. And so and I think those kind of principles, those values around humility and teamship and contribution and connection and all of that stuff, we're kind of have evolved in that way in our highest state of being, because that's what it takes to be a great teammate, and therefore what it takes to win. And individual performers who aren't great teammates, they don't tend to win. Right. You get the occasional aberration, but not really. You know, in the book I talk about no dickheads. The dickheads, if I'm allowed to say that, dickheads tend to be ejected, or if they're not, they tend to bring the team down from the inside. There's a lovely proverb: it's better to have 5,000 enemies outside the tent than one inside. You know?
Great, yes.
Because it breaks connection, which breaks cohesion, and cohesion is what you want. You know, a team that sticks together wins together.
Right.
A society that sticks together wins together. You know, so there is a deep need for an ethos and ethic to believe in and to belong to and to behave in accordance with within all great groups. And, you know, one could argue in society, we've seen an erosion of that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
you know,
I agree. And that's why I think, James, conversations like this and works like this, so important today. So important this day and age when, man, we're just polarized and pulling apart, it seems, when there's such a great opportunity. I think, you know, just in my experience, obviously, you know, every challenge is, if you frame it up, can be an incredible opportunity, you know, just getting through the trials and tribulations of it all. And I think maybe that's where we are. And, you know, global geopolitics, maybe we could go there. That's a dangerous conversation, I'm sure.
It's a dangerous conversation, but I was in a conversation with a guy the other day, and we were joking that, you know, maybe the hope for civilization is that we corral the world's wisest humans, and we take them to Mount Sinai or somewhere, and we lock them in a monastery for a year and get them to synthesize their various wisdoms: Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, you know, feminism and not feminism, and we bring it all together, and we have this round table, argue it out, debate it, the thesis, the antithesis, the synthesis, and then turn it into a book, and then bury that book for 100 years until everybody is dead, and then find it again. And maybe that becomes the script.
Wouldn't that be something?
What we need is a script. And because one of the problems with the algorithms and there has always been dispute but one of the guiding things, I think, certainly in the 20th century, that helped the 20th century kind of unify, is there seemed to be a reasonably singular script.
Right.
You know, a kind of a liberal humanism and a myth in a good way of progress.
Right.
As soon as that script is no longer shared and we get this polarity and this division, you know, we're all sensing it. We're in this, well, there is no kind of, it makes no sense. There is no collective meaning. And collective meaning, I think, is incredibly important and incredibly powerful. Yeah. You know, other than, you know, locking a whole lot of wise people away in Mount Sinai to nut it out. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, because we're living in an increasingly atomized world where we live within our own bubbles and our own algorithms, and that becomes the truth, and that's problematic.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I think that we're not alone here. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people that are looking for the answers now, and it seems like we're out of control. It seems like it's out of our control. So bringing it together. I love it. You might get invited to that party. I probably wouldn't, but here's my proposal. I'll come in as a purser or a chairperson, or maybe even sort of a concierge to make sure everybody's got what they need, just so I can hang out and to kind of listen to the conversation.
And listen to the conversation. Yeah, and actually what's interesting is you would need to form and storm that group in a way to create that particular round table as a high-performing team. And so the qualities they need would be those qualities of humility and of respect and a desire to serve, of contribution, of character. Yeah. That they would be have to be the non-negotiables for that to be a successful project.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is something, again, I think universal in what we're talking about here, and that kind of need and desire to have certain kind of non-negotiables around the way human beings can and should treat one another within civil society, within the town square, right. And that's very, when it's anonymous and online, that idea of civil society, civilization, seems to have been eroded somewhat, and that's a disaster, I think, because surely it's about creating the optimum conditions for human beings to thrive,
right,
and to grow and to become, to coin someone else's phrase, to become what they're capable of becoming. And I think that's the role of leaders, is to create that environment, not necessarily to micromanage it, but to create the space for that to happen.
Oh my goodness, I absolutely love this, James. Thank you so much for this. Listen, I think it starts at home with the parents, and then it gets out to the coaches and teachers. And then, so today's conversation, listen, I can't thank you enough. I've been looking forward to this, James, for some time. I want to thank you for your time. I know you have to go, but we're really looking forward to Ethos. I'll keep my eye on that, and also Where the Earth Meets the Sky, that message. And today's conversation, what a great conversation for those parents, for those coaches, administrators, GMs, and presidents of teams. But maybe, hopefully, a few world leaders might tune in on this one. And,
you never know.
Come away with
you
something.
never know.
That be something.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, and I think particularly if we think about the sort of GM level, that organizational level, I think it does begin at home. It also absolutely happens team by team in teams. But I think more almost the corporate, in its broader sense, becomes a kind of the glue and the oil for society in a way that's much more profound than perhaps it has been in the past. Because with a breakdown of civil society, the way large organizations are led is both hugely influential, but also creates a huge amount has a huge amount of impact on everyone who works there. And so I think an ethical, if you like, or an ethos-based, characterful leadership on that level is more and more and more important.
Yeah, agreed. Powerful message. James, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we made this happen. All the best to you and your family and everybody there over the holiday season. And it looks like we're going to have some really, really interesting conversations to have in the future. I can't wait.
I look, until the next time. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you, Jeff, for having me. It's always a pleasure, and it's been a brilliant conversation.
Absolutely. Great, James. Thank you so much. Okay, do I really even need to say anything? Crushers, listen to me. Wow, like that's what I'm talking about. Think about the conversation with Dr. Jacques Dallaire. Like that conversation, groundbreaking. Then Dr. Rady the week before, and then all the guests we've had on here in this 20th season of Krush Performance. Every single guest, every single conversation, including the ones with just me and you, I think have really brought some context here into how we can shape up our attack on this new year. I kind of use the new year. I personally use the new year of sort of a, hey, reflect back. look forward, and what do we need to do right now? That's kind of how I look at it. And it's just one of those times, 2 or 3 times over the year, I'll really do a big reset. And the New Year's one of them. Again, getting grounded with family again, because everybody's coming over. We're eating, we're drinking, we're playing games, having fun, watching sports, and just having a really good time connecting with family and friends. But this conversation here, ladies and gentlemen, wow, I have to thank James Kerr for all of that. And listen, I can't wait to read that book, Ethos. If you go back to the last time James was on the show, a few years back now, we replayed that interview or parts of it by your request a few times since he was on originally. But there's a couple concepts here. That sigmoid curve is really, really important. Okay. We've had so many athletes that come into an organization or come to us and they've had success and they're afraid to try something new with the fear that it might take them in the wrong direction. Right. And that, listen to me, is real and 100% understandable. But listen, if it's thought through, if it's really thought out well, and the plan serves a purpose or has some reasoning behind it, you cannot not do it. Because we always say this, right? It doesn't matter if we're talking to our major league pro players or our youth developing or our national team players or our junior national athletes trying to make a national team and represent their countries at the Olympics or Commonwealth Games or at World Cup events, right? We always say to them, look, what got you here isn't going to get you there. And that story about Tiger Woods, I mean, think what you will of Tiger Woods. We're not going to get into that, but as a competitor in the game of golf during those heydays, wow, it was fun to watch. But then to see him actually go, okay, hey, look, I'm already the best in the world. He didn't say that, but he was the best in the world. But he said, look, I'm already pretty good at this game, but I know I can be better. How do I get better at this game? And it turns out, consulting with some coaches that he trusted, knew and trusted, it was a little shift in his grip. And if you go back and look at when that happened, you'll see his success rate dropped for a very short time, and then he took off. So this idea of changing at the top, I think too many organizations, I think way too many athletes wait until things start going bad before they make changes. And of course, we see this all the time on the other side of major injuries or surgeries, right? We see athletes go through the process of breaking down, becoming injured, going through rehab, really structured rehab with the purpose of not just returning to play, but returning to performance, a better level of performance post-injury. And they start doing all this work that they didn't do before. And they come back not just a better athlete, but a better competitor. Now, that being said, injuries do pose a very, very valuable opportunity, right? Especially, depending, I should say, when it happens. But anytime you get an injury, we tell our athletes, you get 90 seconds to be pissed off, 90 seconds to throw stuff, 90 seconds to cry and feel sorry for yourself, a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, we'll give it to you. But that is it. That is it. Time to frame it up, look at what's going on, look at how we're going to fix it, and look at how we're going to get to the other side of it. That's it. That's the only plan. As soon as athletes get engaged in that process, we find the healing actually accelerates. And then when the athletes are part of the process of planning the return to play and understanding the work they're doing, it's magical. And for the most part, if things go well, we just hope if the injury isn't too serious or too devastating, they can return not just to where they were, but at a higher place of performance. That being said, listen, while everybody else is competing, the opportunity is you can go and work on things that you would never work on if you're competing, right? And that takes planning and maybe a little bit of expertise, but that's the opportunity, the hidden opportunity inside of an injury situation. So if you're ever injured, get it. Terrible, horrible. Hopefully it's not serious, and hopefully it rarely happens to you as an athlete. It's the number one reason athletes never reach their potential. Injuries, without question. Overuse injuries, burnout, bad planning, not recovering enough, bad work habits, or working too hard, not recovering. That's why recovery is our number one priority in human performance is recovery, regeneration, and sleep, right? Everything we do has to be built around that recovery. That's the secret to a great return to play, return to performance plan, okay? And that's part of the process of just putting it all together, creating a performance environment, which is what this is all about. I mean, you think of that ethos and that sigmoid curve. Make adjustments while you're good. Look for ways to stay good while you're good. And that changes over a career. Early in an athlete's career, it is about maybe getting stronger, getting faster, working on a technical or tactical side of their sport, right? And as they move on, it might be, really working on a very isolated or laser focused part of their game. Part of that might be vision. Part of that might be the mental side. Part of that might be nutrition, hydration. Part of it might be the actual skill itself. Part of it might just be learning how to compete, right? But wherever they're at in their development, there has to be a purpose for that. But staying on top, making those adjustments while you're good is the way. And again, as you move through that timeline, it could change. For our older athletes, it's not that speed, strength developing, though we're always attacking it. It's more longevity. We get to a point where, hey, this athlete's one of the best in the world. How do we keep them there healthy for as long as possible now? And I think if you look at the sporting landscape, even at the Olympics coming up, and the Winter Olympics, or the last Summer Olympics, or pro sports, we're seeing cool things happening at every level of the spectrum. Athletes are entering at young ages, really, really contributing like never before. It's not this big, huge growth curve once they enter. And that has a lot to say about the quality, the preparation of these young competing athletes. On the other side, we're seeing athletes competing really, really well later into their years, right? And that for me is as much fun. So you got these cool things going on. It comes back to kind of that sigmoid curve approach. Make adjustments while you're on top. Don't wait till it falls apart. And you see the organizations that do that, those are the organizations that are good. The All Blacks, for example. James talking about ethos, and then, of course, where the earth meets the sky. This look into the Gurkhas and what happened on Everest. I cannot wait for that story. We know there's going to be just incredible insights into successful cultures, right? And what makes a successful culture tick. But in this case, I can't wait to hear it, because the Gurkhas are famous for their tough terrain battle planning, right? They're soldiers. They are soldiers, and they work in the mountains. They work in these crazy, wicked, tough terrains, and they're historically, some of the best at that sort of thing. So I can't wait to hear what they talk about. And James kind of mentioned it, their mantra, the Kaida mantra. So we'll learn more about that next time we talk to James. Just incredible stuff. Listen, I'd love to hear from you guys what you took out of this. I'm going to go back and listen to this probably a couple times. And I was right there talking to him. And you could see I was locked into what he was saying. Just so many things I was thinking about as James was talking, just like Dr. Dallaire, just like Dr. Rady. Really, really good stuff that I'm going to carry into 2026 here. And let's do it together, okay? So I want to thank James for joining us here. I want to thank you guys for joining us. I can't wait to get this new year underway and start planning it out. We have great things planned here on Krush Performance for the new year, and a lot of it's from you guys. Again, if you have questions, you have comments, smart remarks, get to us. If you need help, or if you have an idea or a topic for a show or a segment, let us know. We have dedicated entire episodes, entire segments to your ideas. So let's work together on that. And yeah, check out our website, jeffkrushell.com. Check out the podcast. Check out Creating Coachable Players. Hey, listen, if you are a baseball coach, that program is for you. Great story behind that. I'll share that more in the new year, but we're very, very excited about that course, and that's a long time coming. And again, by request. I never planned to do a radio show. I never planned to do an online course, but man, so much fun and so powerful, especially when we're working together. That's what I love, that team approach, right? Which I miss. I miss those days of being, with the Blue Jays and in that team sports. Now I'm consulting with Major League Baseball, 20 years, all over the world. But now we've got this team, friends all over the world, around the globe, that I want to just wish everybody all the best through the holiday season and into the new year. And I can't wait. Thank you guys for tuning in. Much more Krush Performance coming up, you guys. Can't wait for it. Talk to you then.
Find out what it takes to be a top performer. Get the Krush blog, podcast, and newsletter at krushperformance.com.
Goodbye now. Don't forget to ride.